got.
Yeah.
The video opens with me chewing. Now, we're going to talk, as I said, about the Melacha of Meamer. Meamer is gathering produce together in the order in which plants or plant material, dyes, the special dyes that they use to color the wool that would be used to make the Mishkan, the bread that would have to be eventually made in the Beis HaMikdash. Within that order, the sequence is quite straightforward. One plows the ground, at least the Gemara says in some locations that comes first. They plowed the ground, and then they planted seeds, and then they harvested. So we've spoken about all three until now. And then when they'd cut the wheat, they gathered it all together in a bundle. Nowadays, we basically can do a series of all of the 39 melachos, several of them, with one mechanical device called a combine harvester. The combine harvester revolutionized the entire farming industry. But the combine harvester can plow and plant, and it can cut, and it can gather, and it can thresh and separate the parts. Right? It can do it all within the machine. By the time you got back to the silo, back to the barn, you've got a huge pile full of grain ready for processing. So the combine harvester really takes the fun out of the whole thing. Or maybe it's a different kind of fun if you like to drive it. But we have a melacha called Meamer, and Meamer is gathering up. Now, in case you think that therefore Meamer isn't relevant, if you have an apple tree in your garden and the apples fall off the tree, they're ripe, it's the season, the apples fall on the ground. So what do? You go around the ground and you pile them up and you put them into a basket, into a little thing to take them into the house.
During the week.
Right. Well,
we'll
say it can't do on Shabbos, but that's what you do in a theoretical sense. So if apples fell from the tree on Shabbos, then irrespective of anything we're going to talk about today, produce that falls off a tree on Shabbos is muksa. Like muksa, we know most people associate muksa with electronic items. Yeah, I always find this fascinating.
Go. I forgot.
No problem.
How do you know it falls on Shabbos?
No.
If
you're away.
Als Shabbos op de grond ligt, you don't know if you've gone for
Dan moet je het niet ophouden.
If you've gone for a few days, how do you know it falls?
You're right. So if there's something called sophic muksa, which is a doubt if something is muksa or not. And Halacha says that sophic muksa is forbidden. If there's a doubt, it's forbidden. But the general way you would know about it in a normal case is that on Friday you were in your garden and it hadn't fallen, and on Shabbos you were in the garden and it had fallen, so you know it fell on Shabbos. But produce that falls off a tree on Shabbos is muksa. I was saying in brackets that people always associate muksa with electronic items, their phone or their car keys, and that they call muksa. And my kids, when their kids are little, they extend the word muksa to a far broader. They think that anything that's forbidden to do is muksa. So the light switch is muksa, they say. When they're little, because muksa is a difficult.
The children, okay.
The children, they're little, so they know it. They know they can't turn the light on Shabbos. So they'll see their younger brother about to turn the light and say, "It's muksa." The reason why you can't turn the light on Shabbos is not because of muksa. Muksa is a rabbinical prohibition to stop you using things that you might come to do a melacha. But in fact, the light switch is the melacha itself. The light switch is a forbidden activity. But even within muksa, when people associate muksa with electronic items, they're actually, in some form, they're partly wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because the halacha says that if you have an item that can be used to do something forbidden, like an electronic item, it could be used for something forbidden, or a pen. A pen is a very good example. Writing on Shabbos is forbidden. The pen, therefore, becomes muksa. But the muksa status of the pen is a lesser muksa status. The halacha says that if you have something that's only forbidden because you might come to use it for a forbidden item, but in itself, holding it isn't something forbidden. A keli, a utensil, an item that's melachto le'isa, who is normally used to do something forbidden, then the halacha says you can move it. You can, on two conditions. You can actually move it, but on two conditions. Condition number one,
You don't use it.
yeah, well, of course, absolutely. That's not, yes, you're right. I should say
You need
that
the
three,
place.
three conditions. Condition number one is you need the place that the item was in. For example, you're coming to set your Shabbos table and you realize that you accidentally put, I don't know what, your phone down on the table. So you need the place. You can move it. You don't need to move it with a shinoi, with an unusual, move it. As long as, of course, you don't press the buttons, you don't move it, you can move it. And example number two, when you could move it, is when you need to use the item for a non-forbidden activity. So an example of that might be if, let's say, again, theoretically, that I'll tell you the example the Mishnah gives is that you have a hammer, yeah, a hammer.
Hammer.
What's a hammer used for? To build. A hammer is a kli, is a utensil. It's used for forbidden activities. If you want to use a hammer to break a nut, to crack the nut open, you're using a hammer for something permitted. You're allowed to. It's not muksa. So what we normally refer to as muksa.
But what's the difference? I mean, if you use it, you use it.
That's right. But the rabbis of the Talmud only forbade you to use a hammer
in case of building.
in case you might build. So they said, don't touch it because you might come to build. But they said it's not in itself
To destroy.
problem. Destroying is also forbidden just rabbinically. But here, the nut, to crack of a nut, is permitted, absolutely permitted. So using it for something permitted, that's fine.
This I don't understand.
In other words, I'll tell you why you don't understand. That's exactly why I like to say it. Because conceptually, you've been under the impression that it's forbidden to use. Now I'm rewriting that concept. It's not forbidden to use. They made a safeguard on Shabbos, the rabbis, that they didn't want you to come to use something for the wrong reason. So they said, don't touch it unless you're going to use it for an okay reason, for a permitted reason. So in fact, it's not really muksa. It's not, in fact, really forbidden to touch. It's that if you're not going to use it for the wrong reason, don't touch it. But if you want to use it for one of those two permitted reasons, you can touch it.
If I want to use a hammer, a kokos nut, a nut,
Yeah.
It was for Shabbos, and so we intend to open it on Shabbos. So should you make a condition that you need the hammer, or you just can use it?
You mean what if you have? Do you mean if you have something
before
else?
Shabbos, you make a
No need for conditions. No, it's used. I'm talking about conditions. I'll tell you.
You can also open the nut and fire it.
Yeah, but you're allowed to use it.
You know,
You're allowed to use a nut to crack a hammer. That's what the Mishnah says. Halacha says.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it unless you want to use it for something okay, either for its place or for the thing itself. And that's why I say that when people talk about muksa, they imagine the electronic item is muksa. It is, but a lesser down level of muksa. What's really muksa, well, there's other levels of muksa as well, but what's really muksa is a stone in the garden. A stone in the garden can't be used at all, not for permissible and not for not permissible. It's something that hasn't been made into a utensil and is lying around, mud, earth, stone. That's muksa. That's really muksa, because muksa means, the word means something that's set aside. That's what muksa means. Lekatser means to set something aside. So these things that haven't been made into something usable by human beings. If you take a stone and you make it into an ornament, then it's now been made into something usable. But if it's not, then it's been set aside before Shabbos. We mentally set aside the things lying on the ground outside, the natural things on the ground, that we're not going to use it. And then you can't use it for anything. You can't get the stone and use it to crack the hammer. You can't get the stone and use it to hold open the door, to wedge open the door. Because it's muksa. That's really muksa. You can't even use it for a permissible activity, for something permitted.
No, but if you take the stone between the door, then the door is open, then everybody can come in.
That's right. So how do you use a stone that you want to take it between for the door, like we do in our building? You have to designate it before Shabbos.
You have to.
to designate it, to set it aside before Shabbos, because why did we say it's muksa? It's muksa because it's set aside mentally from human use. It's lying on the ground. If you take it home before Shabbos and you say, I'm going to start using this, you do an action to show that you're going to use this as a door stopper. It's not anymore a stone, it's a door stopper. And I can use it as a door stopper and it's not muksa. So we have to designate it to be not muksa. If it's set aside, it's muksa. If it's not been designated, it's designated as muksa. But we've gone a bit off the point. The fruit that falls off the tree, why is it muksa, fruit that falls off the tree on Shabbos? Because before Shabbos, it was set aside, it was off limits. Why is a fruit on the tree off limits before Shabbos? Because you can't pluck it off the tree on Shabbos.
Can it still become a goy? Can it still become a goy? It's more easy.
You're too old.
But I'm telling you, you won't be invited back to this delicious apple strudel. If you want this apple strudel, you have to, it's all or nothing. Delicious, very delicious.
Okay. That's good.
It's really soft, very nice. Please don't leave us. We love you so much.
You don't know me leaving.
Okay.
No.
They do.
Je valt best mee te gebruiken.
But
So
the fruit of the tree, the fruit, because the fruit is connected to the tree. So before Shabbos, you'll completely set yourself away from you. The fruit is set aside from human use, because I can't pull it off the tree because it's a forbidden activity to pull fruit off the tree, which we've spoken about. Therefore, if it then falls on Shabbos, and somebody's saying, hey, this was set aside before Shabbos, it wasn't going to be used, now that's fallen, you can't use it till after Shabbos. You can use it after Shabbos, of course you can, it doesn't make it forbidden forever, you've done nothing wrong. It just, the beginning of Shabbos came in, that mentally anything that couldn't be accessed is forbidden. It's the same thing. Imagine if, technically speaking, this is less, again, it's something less relevant nowadays, but conceptually, imagine if someone, your neighbor, you had a non-Jewish neighbor, we all have non-Jewish neighbors, and they came round to your house on Shabbos with a delicious fish that they just fished. They went fishing that morning, on Saturday morning, and a delicious fresh fish. And he says, I know this is a kosher fish. I checked on Google. It has fins and scales. And it's a delicious fish. Now,
is it mukta or not?
Now, here the problem is even worse, because you can't, on Shabbos, it's a bit of a bad example, because on Shabbos you wouldn't be able to cook it anyway. No. So you're not going to eat raw fish. It's more of an example on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov would be a better example, because on Yom Tov you could cook the fish.
He brings Shabbos and herring.
He brings a herring, yes. The reason why I didn't give the example of herring is because I once heard that they fish, I think the correct actual word in English is to farm herring. When you get huge amounts of fish, I think they call it to farm it, not to fish it. How do they say in Dutch when they go out to collect the herring?
I don't think they do that with herring.
That they know that not that they farm it, that they grow it, but they go out twice a year, 2 seasons, and they bring them in huge, but in millions.
The thing is that the herring that we eat in this fashion is a herring that is born in the winter. And it grows, so it's like a veal or a lamb. At a certain age, you can prepare it for that, so that in the month of June, July,
Ik ben in Iyar, ik ben straks.
Yeah, can use it for other applications, for other preparations, but not for this way of eating. So that's why the herring season. But in other seasons, you can cook it, you can smoke it, you can do all kinds of.
So you can actually fish herring all year.
Sorry.
He said you can actually fish herring. I was about to say that they only fish herring. I heard they only fish herring twice a year, like 2 seasons.
Yes.
He said you can fish it the whole year. Just they want it to be the right shape and taste and texture for the consumption that people like it, which is this fresh, uncooked. It's uncooked, right? It's uncooked. It's raw.
Yeah, it's cured.
Yeah.
But you can cook it. Listen, if you microwave it, it's not cooked, but you still get it done. There are other ways of preparing it, and they use a kind of enzymes to do it.
Before I came to Holland to live here, I'd only ever eaten, the schmaltz herring. And then when I came here, it was a very different taste. It's completely different, because schmaltz herring is much saltier. And over time, it's beautiful. And whenever I have guests, coming from England ever, and they taste it and I say it's very good. It's so pure. It's like got a very distinct pure taste. Very nice. I really like herring. But anyway, so if you were to bring you a fish on Shabbos, the fish on Yom Tov, the fish is muksa for the same reason, because since you're not allowed to go fishing on Shabbos or Yom Tov, so any fish that's currently lying in the sea or in the lake or in whatever it is I don't need to mentally say before Shabbos, it's all muksa. It is automatically, it's beyond reach. When it's beyond reach because of this melacha, because you would have to fish it to get it, and you can't fish it, it's beyond reach. If it's beyond reach, it becomes muksa. If it's muksa, then even if it comes within reach on Shabbos, someone brings it to you, it's muksa. Anyway, so going back to our melacha, so fruit that falls off a tree.
One more. If, for instance, the shtul is big before Shabbat, and you're
yes.
invited someplace, you take it along, and you have to, of course, to eat it on Shabbat. It's not for muksa, so you can bring food.
Yes.
Yeah, man, this
There was
fresh fish.
There was
So
no
actually-
prohibition. There was nothing forbidding you to eat the strudel in my house. There's a strudel in my house, right? It's not in your house. He's saying it's not in your reach. It's not forbidden. It just happens to be not your. It's not. I mean, it's forbidden to steal it, but that's a separate. You don't need to do one of the 39 melachas in order to get that strudel. It just happens to be mine if I share it with you. Now, as anything that's accessible from a halachic perspective, that's you don't need to a melacha to get, is a muksa. But you're right, it's true. If the strudel's in someone else's house, it's technically also not accessible. But it doesn't matter. The halacha says it's only things that you would need to do a melacha, and that becomes muksa because it needed a melacha to get it, trapping or falling off the tree. Ever then it's muksa. I was actually going to say something about that. Okay. No, I think of something else. I said that. Some other thought.
Fish.
Yeah, there's. I think,
If you have
remind me, bread. Yeah.
if you have fish swimming in the garden, you can take it out in order to eat.
No, Shabbos you can't.
No.
Yeah.
You moet het doden.
Well, one day, please, well, Be'ez Hashem, it'll take us a while, but Be'ez Hashem will get to the melacha of trapping eventually.
Yeah.
And when we get to the melacha of trapping, you'll see that there are, the concept of trapping is defined by how easy it would be to get the animal or the fish. So if technically speaking, you had a live fish, a fish that's inside a small pot of water, which sometimes they do in like high-end restaurants, whatever, they want it to be fresh, so they keep it alive, whatever. So you had a fresh thing, and it simply required you to go, boom, put your hand in and take it with no effort whatsoever. Then it's not called trapping; it's already trapped from before Yom Tov. You can't re-trap something that's trapped.
So this is mutar.
Well, but there you'd have a difference. First of all, you can't cook it again on Shabbos, and secondly is that that you can't kill it, because killing is another one of the 39
But
melachas.
that's killing it.
Taking the fish out of water is killing, the Gemara says. So in that sense, so it's a different melacha, but I'm just talking about the perspective. In a practical sense, an animal, a domesticated animal, a pet, a house deer, is not trapping the house. The house deer is trapped. It is trapped. It's in a trapped state. The Mishnah Berurah even says that animals that would come back home naturally are trapped even when they're outside the house.
Yes.
Because they come home because they're going to come back.
They are muksa.
They're muksa.
My cat I had a cat, nothing more, but that was muksa.
They're muksa. The animals are muksa indeed, but it's not that muksa. We're saying that technically speaking, muksa you can use with your feet. You can move muksa with your feet. So now, if it was trapping, if let's say the cat was outside and the cat wasn't coming home, he had rebelled, he'd gone crazy, and you were to, they can't see you, you were to sort of kick the cat, not hard, nice in a humane, gentle way, sort of gently push the cat back in the house, then muksa you wouldn't have done anything wrong, because muksa is only with your hands and not with your feet. But if it was trapping, forbidden activity by Torah law of trapping, so trapping, each melacha has its own. There's cases when one doesn't apply and another does apply. But if the animal is already trapped, then you can shoo it back in the house. If we look at a cat and we see the cat comes home naturally anyway, and you're not doing anything forbidden when you
So we have artists that paint with their feet.
Yeah. It's a very good point. It's a very good point. The muksa is rabbanon. It's a prohibition of and they told when they made the prohibition of muksa, like we said, it's like a safeguarding. It's to stop you doing things forbidden, etc. When they made the prohibition of muksa, they said it's only a normative way to move something with your hand, with your feet. It's not called moving it. But any malacha that you do is a doraisa. But you're absolutely right. If you started painting between your toes, it would be called a shinoi. A shinoi is a deviant from normal way to do an activity. It would make it go down from being doraisa, from being forbidden by Torah law, to being drabanan. Absolutely. As a deviant, if you do a malacha in an unusual way, you're not done a doraisa. You're not transgressed Torah law. You transgressed rabbinical law. And you say, what's the difference?
How valid is it rabbinical law?
Oh, so that's what I was going to say. What's the difference between if it's forbidden, it's forbidden. Who cares what?
No,
The penalty for the Rabbanan is less heavy than from the Doraita.
Absolutely, but nowadays people say, well, we don't get either way penalties. We don't.
We don't know what is our.
No, we don't know in the next world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's indeed true. But even in practical,
some the penalty worse from Rabbanan to make it more.
Sometimes there's a Gemara that says that a certain rabbinical prohibition that if someone breaks the prohibition, they put him in a cherem, they excommunicate him to show that people shouldn't just think, oh, it's drabanan, and they make light of it. Yeah, there's a Mishnah that says. Everything okay? Yeah, good. Practically speaking, though, forgetting punishments, it's not nice to talk about punishments. We know none of us, please God, we should all have a clean slate in the next world. But practically speaking, there are practical differences between Torah law, things forbidden Torah law, and things forbidden rabbinically. In the event, for example, that someone needs to break Shabbos, let's say to save a life, as an example, save a life. So the halacha says, absolutely, you break Shabbos. But let's say
Is that the Kuach
nefesh? Kuach nefesh, absolutely.
The Jewish life and non-Jew.
A non-Jew is slightly different. A non-Jew, the discussion, there's a big non-Jew is a big discussion in the Gemara.
And what I have learned that if you save a Jewish life, then it's only that he can celebrate the next Shabbos.
That's right. That's right. In other words, it's not particularly when we say that we break Shabbos to save a Jewish life, but we don't immediately break Shabbos. I say immediately because practically speaking nowadays, the authorities say that if there's going to be such an outrage, if God forbid it gets out, that there was a Jewish person standing by and refused to break Shabbos to save anyone's life, then it could be dangerous even for Jews, because the backlash could be dangerous for all of us. The anti-Semites would fix on such a thing. So we don't, if someone needs to be saved, we don't risk it. We do whatever we need to save them. That's the halachic, the last line in practical halacha. But when it comes to, let's say it comes to saving life, so we know that koach nefesh, that we break Shabbos in order to save a life. What happens if it's just as easy, without any difference, to do it with a slight shinoi? If it's going to make a difference, the Shulchan Aruch says clearly, explicitly, if there's any risk that doing something differently will have a risk to the person's life, any risk, do it the regular way. Even in Torah, break Shabbos in a Torah way. Absolutely. So, for example, a surgeon who's doing surgery should not do surgery with his left hand. Yeah, he should do it with his right. He shouldn't say, well, it's Shabbat. Absolutely not. Chas v'sholom. Yeah, the chances of getting it wrong if he does it with his weaker hand might be whatever, might be, even if they're not a big champ. No, we don't take risks. But let's say, and this happened actually when I was a child, I had some like an infection on the mastoid. It's called mastoiditis. I was a 3-year-old. I don't remember it, and I had to have, and I became quite unwell in a short period of time. And my parents took me into the doctor, and he didn't. It's not so common. It's not an infectious disease. It's just not such a common bacterial illness. So he wasn't sure. So he prescribed antibiotics, but they weren't working. And eventually, I became very sick, and they realized on Shabbos that my life was in danger. So they took me into hospital. In hospital, there was actually a Jewish doctor in the community who said he has mastoiditis. You have to take him in straight away to hospital. So I went into hospital. This is not an uncommon story, but just it was a personal anecdote. And they wanted to do surgery immediately. Now in England, probably in Holland as well, they need, and in those days maybe still today, a person signs, the parents or the guardian signs before surgery. So my parents would have to sign on the paper to allow them to do surgery. Now, the difference between signing, I hold the pen normally like this, but holding it unusual like that makes zero difference to the person's life. It takes the same amount of time. It's a bit more scribbled, but the doctors don't know. They're not comparing it to signatures. So there, the halacha says that if there's absolutely no difference, then do not transgress a Torah law, transgress it rabbinically. So there is, rabbinically, do a drabanan. Because as we said before, writing or doing melacha b'shinui in an unusual way is not forbidden by Torah law, it's forbidden rabbinically. So in the case that you can easily do a shinui, and it doesn't affect the person's life, then of course, why should we go and break the highest Torah law? The Gemara says, Kol mokum de'eshel l'shaninon m'shaninon. Wherever it's possible, do it slightly different, do it different. If it's not possible, then let nobody think that they should look for ways to do it differently. No one should think, don't think. The halacha says, don't hesitate. Act before you think. When it comes to saving lives, it says a very scary statement. The Gemara says, Hashoyol, the one who goes to ask if he should break life. Hashoel, the one who goes to ask, he's got someone in front of him who's ill, who's sick, and he doesn't know, what should I do? Should I break Shabbos? He's concerned for the person's life. Hashoyol, if you go and ask, if you come to the rabbi, you knock on my door and you ask me, Harry zeh shoifech domim, it's murder. To ask is murder. To ask is murder because you're delaying saving someone's life. And then it says, the hanishal, the one who gets asked, the rabbi, if I get someone knocking on my door who's concerned, God forbid, that someone's life is in danger, and they don't want to do something until they get my go-ahead, then not only is the questioner a murderer, but the nishal, the rabbi, who had the question come to him, Harizem Maguna, is disgusting, the Shulchan Aruch says. Why is he disgusting? Because he should have made it absolutely clear to the members of his community that in doubt, if there's any doubt about life on Shabbos, you act first. Because life is so special. Sofik, Tzakonos Nefashos, even a doubt whether something is, if there's a reasonable doubt that something is perhaps a risk of life, or someone needs immediate care, immediate hospitalization, immediate doctors, because to assess, to gauge whether there's risk of life, you act first. You don't ask.
Kol hakavod for all your knowledge, but I haven't even seen a yeshiva from the outside. So how many mistakes I make in my life?
I'll tell you something.
It's a mistake.
I saw the yeshiva from the inside, and I've made many mistakes as well. And I'm a lot younger than you. I constantly make, and the problem is that knowledge, is also a kind of responsibility. So, like he said, a mistake. Shagiyos, the Apostle says, "Shagiyot mi avin." Who can understand mistakes? Mistakes, accidents happen. But people who know and they do things wrong, then you won't want to be in my place. I'm telling you.
In a case of pikuach nefesh, then you don't need to doubt, and you bring. If the person has to be brought to the hospital, you bring a bakar.
Right.
But then, afterwards, can I stop the motor, or can?
That's a very, very important question.
And then, but how can I back by car or without the car?
People ask me this the whole time, especially when it comes to women giving birth. They're going to let's say go in the middle of the night. They can't get a taxi, so they go in on Shabbos. They said, "What do I do with the car once I've taken her in?" People ask this the whole time. There is a discussion in halacha about it. The general accepted, the prevalent custom is that you can park the car and turn off the engine. The reasons for that, turn off the engine. You can park the car.
Turn off the engine.
Turn off the engine. The reasons for that are different. There's different ideas. I have to be honest. I love going off because I find Hilchos Shabbos is so interlaced. All of Hilchos Shabbos is interlocking, but there is a reason for that. Generally speaking, there's a concept in halacha called soifon mishum tchiloson, which means that if people are going to have an issue later on down the line, then they're going to be discouraged from doing what they need to do earlier. I'll give you a much more practical example. Well, not much more practical, but a common example. In many communities, they have Hatzalah. In Israel and in America and England, they have Hatzalah. Now Hatzalah guy goes to a call. Yeah, he goes to a call. Now, if he leaves, Hatzalah, actually, maybe it's not the best example. If he knows that he's going to have to, the call is 3 miles from his house. He's going to go to the call, nothing to talk about. If he knows that he's going to have to walk back on Shabbos, and it's going to basically kill the rest of his Shabbos, then he will hesitate. He might not, he may hesitate before he goes on the call. He may get the message that we're looking for someone to go out to this place. There's been a call 3 miles away, and he says, I'm going to have to walk back. Maybe someone who's a bit nearer will answer the call. And in the meantime, chas v'sholem, time is lost. So there's a halachic concept that's brought in the Gemara called soifon mishum tchiloson, that in order not to discourage people in the beginning, to make it absolutely clear people should get on with it, we say that even stages after the life-saving efforts have been done, the things that are unnecessary, but if it might have an effect on earlier on, then we don't want it to play on, then it's part of the package deal of saving a life. So practically speaking, there's numerous reasons why if a person can't park his car or they can't turn the engine off, it's going to discourage people going to hospital on a Shabbos. Number one, they're going to get in trouble from the hospital. The hospital come out and there's a car with the engine on outside the front doors, yeah. Which for even leaving aside, let's say the immediate danger, but the hospital will start to complain. And the guy says, well, I can't, it's our Sabbath. And we say, then you Jews need to work something out because you can't be leaving your car in front of the hospital doors. So it's not just for their sake, of course, for their sake as well, but for your sake, if you're going to have a problem with that, then you're going to think before going to hospital, you're going to say, it's Shabbos, I'm not going to be able to park my car. I'm not going to be able to turn the engine off. If I don't turn the engine off, it might if there's low fuel, it might damage the car. If the engine stays on when there's no fuel or whatever, it could damage the engine. I'm not going to go. I'm just going to stay at home. It's not worth it. Or I'll wait for someone, a taxi. It's middle of the night. A taxi takes an hour to come. In any case where it might cause delay because there's an immediate thing that will need to be done at the end that won't be done, then we say the whole act, it's all one big act of saving life. It's one package deal. So then to sort of park the car and turn off the engine is part of what's needed to get the woman to hospital or get the person to hospital. But it's a very interesting thing because it's like a accessory to the concept of saving life. Is that what do we do about afterwards? What's the guy going to do? And there's a lot of discussion about it. It's bigger than what I've said.
That's what God says about Israel. What do we do with Gaza afterwards?
Yes, yeah, but it's a good point. It's the afterwards is as important as the before, because if afterwards is going to be a mess, then it sort of says, well, why are we doing this in the first place? Why are our brothers and sisters and going out there, and sadly far every person who dies is one too many, but so many fallen soldiers. There has to be a purpose beyond. The job continues after Hamas, Bezos Hashem, please God, will be eliminated. The job continues to make sure it doesn't happen again. So you're right, and it's a moshel. I think it's actually a good moshel. The job, you don't, if you're very small focus, would say the immediate problem is eliminating Hamas. But we know that that's part of a bigger thing, which is how do we avoid it in the future? And the same with Hilchos Shabbos, with breaking lives. The immediate thing is get the woman to hospital, but part of getting the woman to hospital is a package of what needs to be done in order that this can happen on a regular basis without problems. So there's a even generally speaking, a woman who goes into labor, gives birth. In today's world, Baruch Hashem, in most cases, women have low risk pregnancy, whatever it is, and many people are not in immediate danger when it comes to giving birth. So why do we break Shabbos immediately before anything chas v'shalom starts to go wrong? A woman wants to go to hospital. Immediately, we phone up, we whatever, phone the midwife, take her into hospital. Even before, even if it's low risk, why? Why do we do that? So Rav S said a very fascinating thing. Okay, my friend. Rav S said a very fascinating idea. He said, because giving birth is something that takes place frequently across the population, and women give birth maybe more than once in their life, but it's a concept happening naturally and frequently the whole time. If we start to make measures and say maybe not, maybe yes, then even if in most cases it won't lead to danger, because in many cases it's safe, But what will happen in the bigger picture is that we'll suddenly see, God forbid, people not going to hospital who should have gone to hospital. Again, it's the same kind of svara, it's the same kind of logic. Breaking Shabbos isn't, looking after this woman is only part of the bigger picture of maintaining lives across the spectrum. And because women are always going into hospital, are always giving birth is a natural, regular phenomena across the entire population. So we're concerned that we don't want to make any kind of stringency on any individual woman because of the effect that it might have on the bigger picture, on the population. That you hear? So even if this woman is called low risk, it doesn't matter. We give the halachic terminology, sakonos nefashos, that she's in danger of life, because any woman giving birth should be categorized as that to avoid, God forbid, fatalities somewhere else, even if it's not this particular person.
But nowadays, women know when, and also before, they knew about when they were giving birth.
No,
so they prepare.
No, so
not
preparing anything that can be prepared before Shabbos, anything can be prepared for Shabbos. For example, packing a bag with stuff you need for the hospital, prepare before Shabbos, absolutely. But there's certain things that can't be done until she starts to go into labor, like calling the midwife. You can't go into hospital every week for the several weeks where she could be giving birth. You can't go in on a Friday,
every
Shabbos,
to
the hospital before Shabbos because I might give birth this week. The hospital won't take you in. So, but you're right. Anything that could be prepared before Shabbos, of course, prepared before Shabbos. I tell people in the community, there's a young community, and it's a question that it's frequent enough. It's frequent. Bez Hashem, it should be even more frequent. But the question comes to me. Sometimes people sit with me a month or two before their wives are due, the husband and wife sometimes sit together, and they say, "Can you give us a rough guide to what we need to prepare ourselves for in terms of the halachos of Shabbos?" And I tell them absolutely. I say, like, now you're ready in the 9th month. You have a little bag packed with your phone, whatever it is, with maybe if you need your card because you're going to need to whatever to pay for something, with pajamas, with whatever you need. You have it packed ready. And I also tell them to have a little bottle of grape juice and a challah, not for the woman who's in labor. The woman in labor, I always say, the woman in labor, you do not go to her and say, like, while she's having contractions, do you want to just have some kiddush and challah because it's actually Friday night now? Absolutely, leave her alone. But often the father, when if his wife's about giving birth, then he's there to give to provide emotional support. But sometimes a woman could be several hours and the midwife says it's good, she rests in the hospital bed, but we've got some time. And then he goes to the side of the room and he makes little kiddush, and he shouldn't lose his mitzvah of kiddush because in hospital. And equally, she might have already given birth and it's the next morning and she's still in hospital, and he makes kiddush Shabbos morning. So I say a little kiddush, a little whatever. In a lot of hospitals, in bigger communities, they have, maybe here as well, they have like a Shabbos room with like a fully stocked Shabbos room for people.
In Amsterdam,
They have, yeah.
I know.
Shabbos
For
when you're there.
Chava.
From a Shabbos.
yeah.
They have a Shabbos room, and they have like a little bit of like some grape juice bottles for people to use.
In London,
here in Amsterdam, Shabbos room.
In England, they have Shabbos rooms that are stocked with cakes and everything, like just to make everyone feel good. And you get better food in the Shabbos room in hospital than you get at home. They have snacks and goodies and treats and everything and they have like in the fridge like what's called sliced meat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whatever, and things like that. And they're very nice things. But
they told me a whole fridge that came and you could choose.
Yeah, you could choose.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When Toby gave birth in Amsterdam, our second to last boy, then they didn't have any kosher food that day in the thing. They said we ran out of our kosher food. But we were only there for a few hours. They gave us some fruits and whatever, but they didn't have kosher food. They don't, because they don't, it depends. They get if they have people there. Yeah. Anyway, so we went on to this thing of life. We've moved off, completely off. But you see this concept, this logical concept of that. Saving a life isn't isolated to one person. We look at the bigger picture as well, because we know that determines other people's lives. We want it to be that the collective should be good. There is, in fact, a big discussion in the halakhic authorities, even with regard to family members traveling home from being, let's go back to, let's not talk about people being sick for not pleasant reasons. Let's talk about someone gives birth. So the husband, let's say the woman stays in a hospital and the husband has to get home because he's got kids at home who have been babysat or something. So he wants to get home on Shabbos. And the hospital is several miles away from where they live. If there's any concern, the wife is concerned in her delicate state, she's just given birth, she's immediately at birth, she's very delicate. If there's concern that the walk from the hospital to home concerns her at all, that her husband should walk it, she's not walking it, absolutely not, she's just given birth. But her husband's going home on his own, and she's even concerned that there might be along the way, it's going through a non-Jewish area, which is very common, or it's going to tire him out, or he might get lost because he doesn't have his phone with him or anything, then many Rabbonim say that he should get a taxi. Because he shouldn't do a melacha himself. The non-Jew is doing the melacha, the non-Jew driving. He should get a taxi home, even though, again, he's going home. He's going home from the hospital. He's not saving a life anymore. So paying is also a discussion, but to pay something is not forbidden. Even paying is not forbidden by Torah law. To use money is muksa. To pay for something, to do a business exchange is if you can use a card, it might be better to use a card, and he gives the card to the non-Jew, and then he says to the driver, can you put it to the screen? So if you're clever, you can, if a person thinks he can sort of minimize, but still the novelty of this is, we're not talking about saving life anymore. His wife is in hospital, she's safe. He's going home. He's not in danger of life-threatening danger to walk home. If, of course, there's a dangerous area, if he has to walk through the Bronx with the mafia operating, and it's one thing, but we're not talking about that. We're just saying that if there's a concern to his wife then at least he shouldn't do a Toiraisa, he shouldn't do something by Torah law, but he should go. Because it's a bigger package deal that comes with looking after his wife, and that extends even to how is her husband going to get home now after whatever. And that also extends further in less pleasant situations. God should save us, we should never have such things. But let's say someone has a family member who's sick in hospital, and to visit that person is a 2-hour walk there and a 2-hour walk back. And there's a very good reason to visit them on Shabbos. Let's say you're an immediate family person, an immediate family member, and it will be beneficial both for the health, the mental health and the physical health of the patient, that their family come to see them, don't leave them lying alone in a hospital room for 25 hours. Which is and it's more than 25 hours because it's till the next day visiting hours, so it could be whatever. And also sometimes in hospitals, there's sometimes a case where, not because, God forbid, because they need to do damage, but patients who are left alone, sometimes the medical staff are busy and they don't pay as much attention. And it's often the family members who notify the staff if something, that they say like, can you just check up on them? Can you just this? And sometimes it's family members who are there by the bedside who make a difference to the. And again, like I say, even in first world countries like ours, where no one's got any malicious intent, but just practically they're busy, and especially if it's an older person, much older, who in Western countries, the level of care to people who are very senior, they say, well, they're already old and whatever, which of course is somewhat from their perspective. But we want to ensure that this person is looked after until their last day. So being there is often very important. So then the rabbis say as well, in many circumstances, they say, take a taxi there, take a taxi back, both. Because if you know that you're going to have to walk 2 hours there and 2 hours back, what might you think? I don't want to go. It's too much. I can't do a 4-hour walk. It's exhausting forever. I'm not going to go. If you're not going to go, it's not necessarily good for the person. The person wants you there. So at the very least, if you know before Shabbos that this is going to happen, so you arrange with a taxi company before Shabbos, can you come and pick me up at 2 o'clock? And you avoid doing any unnecessary actions yourself, comes pick you up, and you arrange, I need a taxi back at 5 o'clock, and he comes pick you up at 5 o'clock. Again, for the same idea, because if we say you have to walk there and back, people are going to start to say, I can't, it's too much, it's too much for me, and they'll hesitate. We don't want people to hesitate, we want people to do what needs to be done. And if you can avoid, like I said, if you can avoid in advance doing something unnecessary, so you call up the taxi in advance, and you whatever, and these are common questions. They're common questions, and and people often think like, what, to go back from the hospital there? to go back, I'll walk. It's too bad, I'll walk. And in fact, many Rabbonim, many contemporary Haredi, Orthodox Rabbonim say, no, it's a concern to walk back, and it'll discourage you from doing it next week. It's a complete picture. Yeah.
You mentioned one thing, prefer to use a car. Have the taxi driver put it, I think you're not supposed to let somebody else do what you should do in the first place. In the second place, you're not even to hint something that...
That's true, that's absolutely true. But it's still, and this is again relevant to what we were saying before, the difference between Derais and Rabbanon. We're always sort of trying, it's like a kind of like game, and not to denigrate it, not to say bad, but there's a system. We're trying to do the minimal that we need to do. Asking a non-Jew to do something that you can't do is, you're right, it's absolutely forbidden. But it's not forbidden by Torah law, it's forbidden rabbinically. In other words, technically speaking, I am not allowed to write, but if I were to explicitly instruct a non-Jew to write for me, it's forbidden by rabbinic law, not by Torah law. So now, even in the case that I've instructed a non-Jew to do something for me, it's better than doing it myself. If I do it myself, it's forbidden by Torah law. If I instruct the non-Jew to do it, it's rabbinical. In a normal circumstance, like don't do a rabbinical thing, but in the case, let's say, of getting in the taxi. So it's certainly better to get him to do it than to get you to do it. And what if it's a double rabbinical thing? Like, for example, using the card machine might be forbidden by Torah law. But let's say you ask that he's handling the muksa item, not you. You say, I've got some muksa in my bag. And it's a bit, sounds a bit weird, but there's some coins, they take the coins from the bag. So then, not only are you asking a non-Jew, which knocks it down the land, but you're asking a non-Jew to something that even if you would do is only rabbinical. So it's like a double drabonon, which is like a double negative, like a double positive, whatever you look at. You know, you've gained in two ways. Not only are you not doing it, but it's even something that if you would do is only forbidden rabbinically. And so the halacha often sort of says, like, try and, again, like I said, if it doesn't make any risk to the person's life, try and always do less than necessary, than you need to do. In other words, the more you can limit it, the better.
That is, when you have to do a decision, it's often difficult to charge what is more or less work, more or less Meleches. For example, calling a taxi is not just taking the phone, but it's opening. It's more work. Yeah. Then you can maybe I ask the neighbors to call a taxi, but sometimes then you half an hour are busy in
exactly, and that's why I said
it's easy just take you out.
And that's why I said if the time delay makes any difference to the life of the patient, we don't delay. Absolutely, it's just a matter of and you're right, exactly like I said before. You think first, and afterwards you can look in the books. You'd have to know, if you know the laws of Shabbos on a very detailed level, which is far beyond. I've said to you to everyone's with respect to everyone, it's beyond the average, even very religious person, because most people are knowledgeable about day-to-day workings of what they can and can't do. They know they can't cook, but many people, even people who've been through yeshivas and everything, they're not studied Hilchos Shabbos as a rabbi in great detail to know the nuances, and that's the work of a rabbi. Indeed, I mean, if there's a passage that says Moshe Rabbeinu said it would be incredible if we were all prophets. We should all be prophets. The Torah is not my Torah and not yours just because I'm a rabbi. Being a rabbi is no different. We're all in the same duties to Hashem. But it's true that practically speaking, people have to earn a living. They have limited time. There's a lot to learn. It's a beautiful thing that you come to learn together. And so we're all I'm limited. We're all human beings. We're all limited. So it's true. You can't always make a very quick assessment of like a measuring thing.
You have to explain to the neighbor why I don't have to phone.
Exactly. But sometimes there's cases where you could, like the case with signing with the pen. I said to you before. Was an easy
like
case
everything,
bring it down.
No, the non-Jews know where it costs a light.
Once we
No,
were
a lot of people.
Telefoon, dan denk je, waarom kan je zelf niet bellen? Ik zeg van het licht, dat leert heel veel Joden dat wij dat weten van vroeger. Maar als ik hoor, ga vragen aan de buurvrouw, wil je alsjeblieft een taxi? Dan kijken ze je aan. Ben je gek, kan je dat zelf doen? Dan moet je dat helemaal als dan is het al.
For the next person. But we were discussing it for so long that the driver had no time to lift.
It's actually
Sometimes
interesting.
if you learn too much about it,
Yeah.
I've done genealogical research, and so I went to archives, and I've seen a lot of deeds. And so if somebody is born, you have to declare within a certain period. And it also happened on Shabbat, and then I see that so and so declared that he had his wife delivered a son, blah, blah, blah. And but he cannot sign the deed because of Shabbat.
Right.
And so it's like that.
And you've seen that even. You've seen people declaring their child's birth, but leaving blank the signature.
So you can go to the register, and of course, the doors are open.
Right. Just walked in.
Say, I have a son of a.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's fascinating.
Shkoyach.
Okay, Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
There's a very beautiful piece of Maharal. Maharal was a Rabbi Yehuda Lau. He lived in Prague, and he was a big thinker, like a machshava writer. And he says a beautiful idea. He says that based on a Gemara, that even when a person does something, a sin, deliberately, deliberately, it's also a mistake. It's a beautiful idea. He says also a mistake because in some form, a person, if we were totally not just not knowledgeable is the wrong word, if we were totally conscious our whole lives of the obligations, the responsibilities as a Jew, what Hashem wants from us, then we wouldn't sin. Why do we sin? And we're all human. Why does a person get tempted to sin? Because there's distractions, there's temptations. Very often, says the Maharal, in any case, once a person has the temptations out the way, he says, I shouldn't have done that. It was a mistake, he says. Even when people do something deliberately, they say, it was a mistake of judgment. I shouldn't have done that. Imagine a person. That's why I have Yom Kippur.
But why do we have Yom Kippur?
So
anytime we can.
That's right. We can, absolutely. But I'm saying something, he says, I'm trying to say something beautiful. He says that we don't ever think that the things we did by mistake, okay, it was by mistake. And the things I did deliberately, there's nothing I can do about it. Even without tshuva, just the concept, the thought that it was a mistake, you've already brought it down from being deliberate to a mistake. A guy does some money fraud, and he gets arrested. He gets put in front of the judge. At that moment, he says, "It was a mistake that I did it." Now, judge, what do you mean it was a mistake? You did it deliberately. You knew what you were doing. It wasn't by mistake that you stole. You stole maliciously. No. But if I knew the bigger picture, and I knew that I would get arrested, and I knew that I'd end up in court, I wouldn't have done it. So now, in retrospect, it was a mistake. Says the Maharal, everything we do, we don't mean to sin. No one means to be bad. We all only want to do good. But a human being has challenges. There's temptations, there's circumstances. But we have to remember, we should allow ourselves room to remember that even under those circumstances, those temptations, we were tempted. And after we say, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. And Hashem will judge us as if it was a mistake and ignore the fact that we knew what we were doing. It wasn't totally accidental, but it was a mistake because we're all good people. No one means to do bad. We only want to do good. Just get tempted. Human beings. Right, my friends.
So,